So we're back here in the Root Calls podcast today, and man, we've outkicked our coverage. We've got Austin back, which, you know, that wasn't too big a kick, but we got a traveling guy today, way further than Manhattan. So honored to have Mr. Dave Olson here with Sustainable Growing Solutions, and always glad to have Austin Cisneros. Is that closer?
Cisneros, closer.
Cisneros.
We're getting closer every time.
Yeah, from Manhattan, Kansas, not the island in New York, but anyway, yeah. So, man, been talking about some stuff, and Mr. Dave's got a vast experience with plants and soils and soil health and plant health and biology and squid juice and all that good stuff. You know, so it's quite interesting. You know, as we think about farming, how we are tied to the ocean, and we use so many of those products in agriculture today, don't we? What led us there, Mr. Dave?
Well, I guess the availability of those as ingredients, and so many of them have useful functions for us. And of course, all life really evolved from the ocean. And so those ratios of nutrients that we find in seawater are the same things in ratios of what need to be flowing around in a plant, and even in our own blood in the same ratios. It's pretty cool to see that.
In the blood, okay.
Yeah. So we've got seawater extracts that we use, so we take most of the sodium out of. So it's really broad spectrum mineral complex, and I like it because it's all solubilized and all plant available. So we use those in some of our foliars. And of course, we love things like seaweed and fish hydrolysates too.
Yeah. So we've been using some biologicals here for a long time on the farm, and Austin, the one thing that Mr. Dave brings to it is that he has an approach to hit a target.
Yeah.
You got a problem, he's got a target, and he might have a bug. It can help us with that, or I guess you have a bug for. I wouldn't say 100%, but a vast majority of problems. There's a solution.
Yeah, we try to be pretty thoughtful about our programs, and so we usually come at it from just more than just one perspective. So yes, there are a lot of biocontrol functions that we can do that address particular production problems, but I think we also come at it from a more fundamental level of really trying to rebuild the entire soil biology and the function and all the support that the biology does for the plants. And as soon as we start doing that, the nutrition status of the plant seems to go up, and we can pile onto that. And as soon as those things start to work, a lot of the other problems go away. So it's kind of a multifaceted approach, and we're really trying to work with nature instead of just dominate it.
Yeah. So Austin, I want to set Mr. Dave up in this question to talk to us about Sustainable Growing Solutions, what got you started and what got going. But, I named you Smart Farmer Specialist, I think.
Yeah, like consultant. Yeah, something.
I think he's going to be the root exudate analyst.
Okay, all right.
So, I mean, we've had a real good lesson on root exudates, and if we had that recorded this morning, I could have got my first degree in college.
There you go.
Yeah, so that would have been helpful so that I'd have something to hang up on the wall.
Yeah.
But just really, that's what we're here for. Mr. Dave, give us a little insight of how did Dave Olson get to Trenton, Tennessee in 2026?
Sure. Well, the last part of that story is Austin brought me here. But, pleased to be here. I'm enjoying my time here with you very much, and enjoying learning all the things about your production practices and some of your challenges out here. So I'm a 6th generation farmer. My family farm turned 175 this year. So grew up on the farm doing all the jobs you can do, and all. At the time that I was starting to really be very active on the farm, my dad was working with a bunch of organic inputs. So it was like, what's humic acid? How do you use it? How much do you use? When do you use it? What are we looking for in terms of response?
And that was back in the 70s.
Correct. Yes. 70s. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I was doing all the field trial stuff, and just learning a lot about all these basic types of inputs. And one of the things we learned really early on was that every one of those things worked better in combination than they did in a standalone situation. The outcome was better, and it was much more reliable.
Better together.
Yeah, it's always better together. And that's kind of resonated through our whole process of developing our company and our products.
Okay.
And so a few years after that, we worked with our first biological. It was actually a spinoff from a NASA program. So it was several different bacillus, and that was like 40 something years ago. Accidentally discovered that it was suppressing some diseases in some permanent crops. And so that was illustrative. And shortly after that, my dad developed his first biological product, which was about a dozen different species of microbes that were intelligently selected. And that worked great sometimes, and sometimes it didn't work.
Yeah, I'm a reformed tightwad, and I've always kind of been upset with the NASA budget, but we've really gotten some inventive things from NASA. It's dollars well spent, isn't it?
There's a lot of spinoffs, yeah.
Yeah, I mean a lot, and we really probably aren't spending enough in that area today as a country.
It does trickle down. I've actually been in NASA's spinoffs magazine twice.
In that twice. Well, that's well, congratulations.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to get my first degree this morning, so I'd rather be in NASA spinoff.
Dave's already in 2 magazines.
Yeah. Well, that's very interesting. So you've been failing at this your whole career and learning a little.
True. Yeah. You stub your toe a lot of times.
Yeah.
But, after a period of time, the pattern starts to fall together. So I mentioned that first product that was the dozen species, and it worked sometimes really well and didn't work others. And that actually led us to one of our fundamental insights, which was, yes, those are high functioning species, but it's really the entire ecosystem of the soil biology that we're trying to restore. Because the hit and miss nature of that product was because sometimes it would land and it would colonize and the microbes would do their job and you'd see the benefit. Other times they would land and they'd either fail to colonize because there was just not enough of a community for them in the soil for them to work with, or the conditions were such that they never turned on those functions and never performed those duties. And so we didn't see the benefit. And so when we looked at the grower's soils, we realized what we're seeing was a broken ecosystem. And, a healthy soil should have 1,000 different species of microbes and 1 billion microbes in just a gram of soil. And what we were seeing was dozens of species, not 1,000, and hundreds of thousands of microbes instead of 1 billion. And so from an ecosystem standpoint, completely broken. So adding just a dozen species does not fix that. So it really changed our mission to restore the entire soil biology, which is where you get that resilience of the population and the reliability, the function. So for every one of the beneficial functions that the microbes do for the plant, and they are myriad because the microbes in the plants co-evolved. So the plant's expecting this, this close relationship, and kind of in modern agriculture, we've pretty thoroughly broken that.
At nobody's fault. We just went the easier path, and now we've got to maybe back up and reevaluate that.
And it's an accumulation of a bunch of small things over a long period of time. And I always say that farming is one long series of compromises, because there's no such thing as the perfect application, perfect timing. And it's all logistics that we're trying to deal with. And so,
good point.
As we build our crop programs, because we got these integrated programs that we're bringing this all together, we know that it's not possible for us to stop doing some of the detrimental things. So we try to do less detrimental things, less often.
So you don't want to get the Band-Aid before you start bleeding.
Well, we're just trying to, take 2 good steps forward and then less steps backwards.
Yeah. Yeah. So that makes total sense, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
it does, sure does.
Yeah, just like Austin, he was sharing with us yesterday. He's doing this. He's grazing his cows, paddocks, and all this. And
collars.
Collars. I mean, how wild is that to have your cows on shock collars?
All fired up.
Yeah. So I don't know. I
feel bad for the slow learning cows.
Yeah. I wonder if that was a NASA spinoff. I bet it was.
Maybe.
It should have been if it wasn't. But yeah. So Austin, maybe you might tap into what our roundtable's kind of been about this morning. And I think everybody in the building learned a lot. And this man taught us something we really didn't have a clue about.
Yeah.
Would that be fair?
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. And it's funny, we should, you say we should have recorded our conversation this morning. I should have recorded our conversation on the way up here yesterday. Dave and I talked the whole way, and I was picking his brain and, just couldn't stoke it all in. But yeah, it's been really good just to kind of take this and say, okay, here's our specific issues and how do we go about addressing these and, bringing it all together and making it affordable and where it can be scalable. Right. And so I think that's been a big value that you brought coming and sitting down and talking this morning with it is we're able to kind of put all of our heads together on this and say, okay, how do we take this to the next level? How do we address these issues and make this where, we kind of start to bring some of these farms back and put that natural ecosystem in or that, community that we're all lacking.
Mm-hmm. And profitability,
and yep.
fun and less stress and all the stuff that was kind of been missing for a little while.
Yeah, we do bring the fun back to the farming.
Yeah.
Bring the fun back to farming. Yeah.
There you go.
So that's
well, we were talking a lot about the biology and a bunch of the functions that it does for the plant, and we're focused specifically on talking about the fertility functions that the microbes do and how we integrate the microbes into the fertility program. So the microbes can, of course, not only take nutrient potential that is in the soil and translate that into actual plant nutrient status. That's an important part of their job. And the way we design our fertility programs is we want to make sure that the biology is there, it's functioning, and it's doing its job for the plants. And if we do that and make sure that they've got the building blocks to deliver to the plants, they pretty much take care of a lot of the fertility for the plant. And the plant, once it gets healthy, has efficient photosynthesis because it's got all the right nutrients and the right ratios. And that allows it to have excess photosynthates that it can put out through the roots as exudates. And those exudates, of course, are sugars. And sugar is just a carbon molecule with a bunch of hydrogen hung off of it. That feeds the microbes. So it builds that community of microbes right there in the root zone and the rhizosphere. So you can actually see that if you pull the plants out, you can see that colonization of the roots. But and of course, that does a lot of things. It changes the carbon to nitrogen ratio right around the roots and buffers it from salts and other things. The plant now is going to operate more efficiently, but you've got with those exudates, it also embeds signals to the microbes to tell the microbes what nutrients the plant wants right then at that growth stage. So the microbes will collect whatever nutrients and whatever ratios the plant's asking for. So it's instead of us dictating to the plant what its fertility is going to be by dominating it and bombarding it with all these inputs, we're really just trying to set the table and make sure that all the pieces are there and let the plant really dictate its own fertility. So avoid all these like over applications of fertilizers that one are just turning out to be very inefficient in terms of the plant's ability to utilize those. And of course, it affects the economics and even can cause other production problems by getting in the way of other nutrient availability or creating tissues that are naturally attractive to different pests. So by taking this tact, we can really, really cut back on the fertilizer program. So
and decrease the insect pressure, all kinds of plant health benefits,
disease pressure, all of it.
All those things start to come together.
The pain points. Pain points.
So we were looking at some SAP analysis, and we're talking about how do we integrate the function of the biology into our fertility program, and save some money in our fertility program, but also do it in a way that we have the confidence that we are still meeting our fertility targets. And that's where we really started talking about SAP analysis.
Yeah. So let's first thing, I go to a lot of meetings and they say, well, what are you doing? I do SAP. I do SAP analysis. And now I can say, and I even know what it means.
There you go.
Now I can, after $20,000 worth of SAP test, I think I could even tell you what it means. So that was the power of this morning.
It was
really helped me out. But really, just give our listeners just a small view of the sap versus tissue versus the overall soil. Just what are we looking at there, and And what's the big difference? The SAP is the elite measurement of the actual what's going on in the plant.
Yeah, when we say SAP, it's not an acronym. It literally means it's the juices that are kind of flowing through that plant at the time that you're taking the sample.
Cool.
What's neat about the SAP analysis is you're taking tissue from the older growth in the plant, so it's the hardened off, more basal type leaves, and then you also take a similar sample, but from the just newly hardened off newest growth.
Mm-hmm.
And you're paying a lot of attention to the differential between the old tissue and the new tissue. And so with this analysis, it tells you what's happening right now within the plant. And it's kind of similar in a lot of ways to the tissue sampling that, of course, we've been using for so long and a lot of people are much more familiar with. But the tissue sampling does a much better job of characterizing what the nutrient status was of the plant when those tissues were being built. And so it tells you kind of a little bit more hindsight what was going on, whereas the SAP is what's flowing around now. It tells you much more what's current. So I guess the analogy that I make is a tissue sample is like trying to drive your car by only looking in your rear view mirror. You can see where you've been really well, but it's hard to tell where you're going. With the SAP analysis, I feel like you're at least looking at your front bumper because it tells you what's happening right now.
Yeah, I've often, you think about this, we've talked about NASA. Wonder why they have a windshield in those rocket, in those space shuttles.
Instead of just being closed off.
Yeah, I mean, really.
You don't know where you're going, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're just, what did they say in Apollo 13 is bid by, they got all the supplies from the low cost bidder, to build the rocket. And yeah, so it is interesting. So the SAP does give us a clean view of all decisions need to be made in the windshield.
Yeah, and in the program that I'm describing, where we're relying upon the relationship between the biology and the plant to dictate the plant's fertility, we really don't want to leave ourselves exposed to the potential of having a nutrient deficiency, which takes us backwards in our crop quality and our yields. So the SAP analysis is a wonderful tool to be able to track not only what our current nutrient status is, but also the trend lines, so we can kind of see if we're headed towards meeting a nutrient demand that we can anticipate certain nutrients are in peak demand at different crop growth stages. So we kind of track the trend lines on those and make sure that we're on track to meeting those. And so if we have those materials available and we have the ability to, say, apply a foliar application, we have the ability to course correct this whole way through. So it's not like we're trying to fly without a net.
So you got your foundation of the Solvix data, the TND, the genomics, and the Haney in there, right, Austin? Yep. So you're not throwing your hook into a pond that there's no fish in, or there's fish in the pond that you got your hook in.
Yeah, I love the data set that comes with the Solvix.
Yeah.
So you get the two different types of soil analysis. You get the saturated paste that we're used to, which is just tells us kind of what is available nutrient-wise to the plant in soluble form. Then we've got the total nutrient digestion, the T&D, that tells us what all the nutrients are, regardless of their availability in the soil. So if you have both of those two data sets, the saturated paste is kind of like, okay, that's what we've got to work with. But the T&D tells us what the nutrient potential of the soil is. And the difference between those two is biological. So if you have a lot of phosphorus, say, in the soil, but it's not in plant available form, that's a biological problem.
And applying more phosphorus is just like running on a treadmill.
Yeah, that happens to a lot of growers. They get super frustrated. They'll see in the total nutrients in their soil, they've got many years worth of phosphorus budget locked up, but every year they put on more phosphorus, which is probably not the most efficiently spent money. And every year they look at their crop performance and they're deficient in phosphorus. And so they get very frustrated when the PCA comes back and says, well, what we need to do is put on more phosphorus. It's like, well, that's what we did last year and that didn't work then. Why is it going to work this coming year?
Yeah, and last night, Austin, I enjoyed Mr. Dave's story about you have seen a farm, a very biologically active farm, run out of phosphorus.
Yeah, you got a bank account, so you've been depositing and depositing and depositing, but if you start making withdrawals and not paying really any attention to what your balance is, at a certain point you're going to run out. And for some people, it may be even decades. But kind of the strategy that I like to employ is like, okay, first know what your bank account is, and you can start taking advantage of that. But I tend to look at more of a going into a maintenance mode, where if you have a good balance in your bank account, and you look at what you're withdrawing, which would be how much, say, phosphorus is leaving the farm through nutrient removal in various forms, then if you only put on that much, you should be able to maintain your bank account. And that's a lot lower level of input than what we usually see out of the university recommendations.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the crop removals that are advertised, that ain't where you go for this information about the crop removal.
Yeah. And yeah, you can do it a couple different ways. One, you can test your own residue and see what the nutrient contents are, or you can use year over year sap analysis on your crop. So and we're going to get into looking at sap results here in a minute, but part you would look at is you can look at what the nutrient status is at the very beginning. And if it's very high and it shows that it's in a surplus, it's like, yeah, maybe I don't need to put any on, at least maybe not at the beginning of the season. Maybe I wait until I get into a crop growth stage that's actually demanding that nutrient.
Let's do this.
Picking up the inefficiency piece of that. Yeah,
let's do the sap.
Okay,
I'm excited to learn again. They say you have to say something 7 times before you learn it. So if I got 3 down, I got 4 more to go. So
all right. Well, the first one go ahead.
Just starting with the total nitrogen. So this is kind of insightful to me. We've looked at a lot of sap testing, and I've never really understood. You're looking at things, but really the way you explained it today really helped kind of bring that all together for me. And just looking at total nitrogen. So, some of the things that you said that stuck out to me was just looking at the spacing in between in which you're wanting to make sure that plant, kind of like you were talking about earlier with the sap testing, and what the purpose of that is old versus new, is you're wanting to making sure that nutrient is getting pulled up through the xylem and phloem of that plant. And there's not a part of the plant that's antagonistic to itself in a sense. So to make sure that you've got just the good flow, there's an even amount, you've got some in the old part of the plant and the new part of the plant, and that there's not a huge gap in between those two as far as the plant goes overall.
Yeah, that's kind of how you would look at it for all of your mobile nutrients.
Yes.
So you pay attention to the difference between the old tissue and the new tissue. So the plant will always, in a mobile nutrient, it'll steal from the old tissue to support the new tissue, preferentially, if it's deficient. So one of the first things that I look at for mobile nutrients is the relationship between the old and the new. If the old is the same or a little higher than the new, then you know that you're in a nutrient sufficiency. If the new is higher than the old, is like, okay, maybe I'm going to start looking at that more closely. There's reasons why you could have higher nitrogen or a higher nutrient status of new than versus old and not necessarily be deficient, but that's one of the first things that I look for. So when we're looking at this total nitrogen, of course, total nitrogen, we're looking at all the forms of nitrogen in the plant. So that includes nitrate, urea, ammonium, and amino acids. So, of course, nitrogen being one of our mobile nutrients here, you can see that throughout the entire period here, the old tissue in this dashed line is higher than the solid line representing the total nitrogen status of the new tissue. So right away, that tells me is like, hey, I think that we were good on our nitrogen levels the whole season. So if we'd cut back a whole bunch, so it's not uncommon for us to say cut back on the number of nitrogen units at planting by 50%, because we know that the biology is there to support the plant. If I were to do that and then see a line like this, is like victory. We've always had adequate nitrogen, and we saved a bunch of money, and we also, by not having excess nitrogen, especially in the form of nitrates or ammonium, that we actually sidestep some potential production problems. So looking good here. The last thing.
What would be two of those production problems?
Oh, actually, when we talk about the nitrate and ammonium, we'll get into that. So paying attention to the end of the chart here, it looks like we've got a crossover between the old and the new.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't be super concerned about the differential between those there, but I would be watching that trend line. So it's like if that continues out, it's like I might be getting ready to look at a potential intervention.
And we're really at harvest.
Yeah.
I mean, we're at mature.
Yeah, you're done.
Yeah. So, but would you worry about it in the next crop if it's this fall or next spring?
No.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, that doesn't necessarily tell me that I finished without enough nitrogen, say, in the soil, because in part of our integrated programs, we do other things like we treat the crop residue with some of our decomposer microbes, and that's a fantastic opportunity to fix nitrogen. So just because we finished with the plant, kind of in a crossover condition here, and nitrogen doesn't mean that that's what it's going to look like when we plant in the next season, because all sorts of good stuff's going to happen.
Okay. Yep. All right. So page 2 here, Austin.
Yeah, flipping to nitrates. So on the nitrates, so I guess starting with this is, when you talked about the disease and some of these crop production problems that we might run into, this is kind of one that, as far as insect and I guess more specifically, you're biting and chewing insects. When you have those nitrate levels get high, that's basically the dinner bill for them, is kind of how you put that this morning. And so it's also based on your form of nitrogen and what you're putting out there.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. So you're taking up nitrogen again in one of those 4 forms.
And what are they, David?
So we've got nitrate, ammonium, urea, and amino acids.
Okay.
So the microbes are feeding the plant the form of amino acids, which is the building block that the plant is actually looking to get to. So the microbes delivering it in that form actually saves the plant a lot of water, time, and energy. So in this case, we're looking at the form of nitrogen nitrate. And again, it's mobile within the plant. But what I really like about seeing this is on that first slide, we showed the total nitrogen. So we know that the plant was never deficient in nitrogen. So we're happy about that. So when we see this nitrate being super low, this is actually a good thing, because the plant is started out with taking up nitrate, but it's converting that nitrate into amino acids. So the plant has to invest water, like 6 molecules of water to translate a single molecule of nitrate. Plus, it has to invest energy to break that bond of the nitrate to release the nitrogen. And then it has to add other minerals like magnesium and sulfur and some other things to form amino acids. So that's kind of the process. And then the plant uses those amino acids for physiological processes, and it also binds those amino acids together to form peptides, polypeptides, and eventually proteins. So this nitrogen conversion process is really important. And so this tells me that the plant is doing that conversion efficiently, and we're avoiding excess nitrate accumulation in the plant. So if you're kind of stalled out and the plant has a lot of nitrate and it's not making that nitrogen conversion efficiency, then there's all sorts of, as you said at the beginning, there's that high nitrate status attracts some biting and sucking type insects. Things like mildew also like a high nitrate status plant. So as we get this level down like this, that means that we've basically reduced our risk profile for those types of production problems.
So you said something that's interesting to me. So when you see this low trend of nitrate and that you're getting that conversion of them into the amino acid form, which correlates to protein. So, I mean, I guess I'll just, from a cow operation feedlot mindset, could you relate this to, like, at the end in his yield, harvest, he's going to have a higher protein level versus somebody that has higher nitrate levels. Mm-hmm. And would you also relate that to nutrient density in that crop as well.
Sure. Yeah. You'll see it in all the grains. We tend to see the protein level go up. We can see that in some of our forages as well. So definitely see protein content of things like alfalfa go up. And yeah, when you're looking at the sap analysis, of course, you're looking at all the minerals that are flowing around the plant. When you've got 20, 30, 40% higher of those nutrients in the plant, yeah, that translates into the final
nutrient
product.
density.
Yeah, so you have much higher nutrient density in those materials.
Get back into feeding cattle.
Yeah. I'm waiting on you there. You need partners though, don't you?
Yeah.
When Dave partners, I'll be right back.
All right. All right. Now I know what I need to have for my selling point.
So that's very interesting. And I'm a farmer, so NH3 is nitrate, and hydrous is NH4.
Mm-hmm. Ammonium. Yeah.
Ammonium. Yeah. Yep. And then NH2 is
nitrous. Yeah.
Yeah. So the closer you get to the proteins, that's the least energy the plant has to exude to make the protein.
That's the advantage of the both efficient nitrogen conversion as well as the plant getting a large part of its nitrogen diet fed to it by the microbes in the form of amino acids. You just kind of skip that whole step.
And you're going to increase the bricks, which is positive for everything.
Yeah, as you raise that nutrient status of the plant, because the microbes are delivering those nutrients to the plant, all those photosynthetic related nutrients will go up, and so the photosynthetic efficiency of the plant goes up. When you apply our biology, say foliarly, to a plant, we've got all these metabolites that are actually in the product, and they directly act on the physiology of the plant, and it increases the photosynthetic efficiency. So typically the day after, you're going to see a green flush out of those plants. You'll also see thicker cell walls, thicker leaves, larger leaves. I was showing Austin earlier today some cotton where we basically just doubled the leaf size.
Yeah. Impressive.
Yeah.
So once you've got that nutrient status up, then you're going to have better photosynthetic efficiency, and that bricks and the sugars that we talk about in the sap are really just the carbohydrates that are the product of photosynthesis.
It's just amazing, the circle.
Yeah, it's wild. All right, so then we'll go on to the ammonium, and kind of just this one, is interesting to see that it was, when that ammonium was higher, it symbolizes that it's a stress period in that plant's life.
Yeah, the plant can accumulate ammonium in a couple different ways. Just ionically, that might be the form that it picks up. But again, it's mobile in the plant, so we're paying attention to the ratio between new tissue and old tissue. And of course, we want it transformed from that form into the amino acids. So we don't want to see that ammonium bioaccumulate. So the ammonium can bioaccumulate in the plant, particularly under stress periods. So what happens in, say, day wilt or just a drought condition, the plant will close its stomata. So it's effectively holding its breath. So those gases between the chloroplasts can accumulate ammonium. And because it's still doing some photosynthesis, but it's not off-gassing. So that's when you see ammonium start to accumulate. Well, that can be a sign of a stressor event. And so when we talk about certain types of pests, we say mites and thrips like stressed plants. And so everybody knows that. But for a long time, it's like, well, what is it about a stressed plant that draws those particular pests? Well, it's because the stressed plant is actually accumulating the ammonium, and that's what they like.
And so here on 6.2, that's telling you that we're entering a stress time.
Yeah, it sounded like you could validate that from just this data set, what happened with the weather and also with your pest pressure.
Yeah, so that's amazing. The correlation, you can tell what happened and not even been here.
Yeah,
it's pretty amazing.
It's just
and here around the 1st of July, we crossed paths again with the old and the new. So we corrected. We did something right. There we go.
Might have gotten some rain.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Maybe it was Mother Nature fixed it. Yeah. So anyway, but it's just amazing, Austin, to follow that correlation.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of data and it's a lot of information. And, you know, when you look at this, I would say most guys are going to look at that total nitrogen piece of that. But when you break it down into the forms of nitrogen, there's so much more information to be gathered there. And it gives you the ability, I think, to, again, make good management decisions, or to, you know, kind of say, okay, here's some of these things that we can look at. And when we're going out there the next season, you're kind of able to have some guardrails in a sense and say, okay, you know, timing of products and applications and stuff like that. I think you're able to stack this on. But
hey, Austin, one good point to think about that I've just learned lately is when you take a plant and you take the dry matter, you know, there's only 4% is minerals, and 1.5% of that is these nitrates.
Yeah.
So we're really dilly daddling in nothing as farmers here. We're in the air bit. We need oxygen. That's the big part of this. But the N is the big one here, and I guess that's really the are you healthy or are you dying kind of a meter. So yeah, so that's my takeaway from that as a farmer.
Yeah, and I mean it's you know, a big input for you, and to know that it has so much impact on everything, you know, really paying attention to that form of nitrogen and the timing of application, I think, is the two things that I picked up from that, and being able to kind of really look at these and say, okay, you know, like in our part of the world, we deal with mites a lot on wheat. And I've had a lot of guys ask about that, you know, and I guess I've never broke it down to the ammonium piece of that. And like you said, that plant is holding its breath. And to me, I'm like, okay, wheat, usually it's dry in the wintertime or that first part of spring, and those mites kind of come out and they just, you know, wreak havoc on wheat out in our part of the world. And so it's just looking at that form, that ammonium, and being like, how do you get that plant breathing or relaxing in a sense? And so,
and we actually combat this in several other ways. So not only are we feeding the plant a more favorable form of nitrogen and therefore sidestepping the risk of the ammonium, but the microbes also put out a bunch of anti-stressor compounds. So when that plant actually is under a stress environment, or drought or heat or salt pressure, those types of stressors, the microbes put out anti-stressor compounds. So a stress plant tends to accumulate things like ethylene and abscisic acid and some other senescence-related type plant hormones. The microbes actually put out compounds which break those up. So ACC deaminase being an example, it'll break up the ethylene. So, and it also, the microbes will put out compounds that help with the stomatal efficiency of the plant. So it does a better job of, again, regulating its gases and stuff. And so
in my farming career, you know, I've always been, let's just put on some more in, you know, but here we're learning that too much, it's a consequence for that as well. Those microbes aren't working, which aren't putting off those things to help you through those stress times.
That's another good point, is here we are trying to get nature to support us. So we want these microbes to fix free nitrogen for us, right? But if we're bombing it with a whole bunch of synthetic, you know, imported nitrogen, it actually really disincentivizes that community of microbes that could be working for you to actually perform that function.
So it's really a dance.
It is, but I think that the SAP is a tremendous tool that allows us to monitor the status. And so if we start getting off track or off trend line, it's like, okay, we have the opportunity to step in and intervene and course correct before we've actually done any damage. And along the way, we've given ourselves the opportunity to not only save a bunch of money on our fertilizer, but sidestep some, you know, pretty persistent types of production problems.
Right. Yeah. So that's another big understanding. How have we not understood that before? I guess you've known it for a long time. So
it's always unfolding for us. You know, we learn new stuff, you know, constantly. And it's actually, that's part of what makes it so much fun. And as you start to learn how these things work, I mean, it really gives you an appreciation for the elegance of nature and creation and how things, you know, how they work. And the more we learn, the more humble we should be.
Yeah, we're not very advanced. I mean, when you think about it. So, yeah.
Okay. So, moving on to phosphorus and seeing how kind of the same correlation, making sure that you just have that even trend and the uptake throughout the plant. And, this one is, to me, is, understanding when that plant is going to be calling for phosphorus and when does it need it, and making sure that it's there, as a deficiency isn't the end of the world, I guess, in a sense, as long as it's there when the plant needs to pull it up.
Yeah. And again, the sap is going to tell you that, because the only time that your new tissue is going to be higher than your old tissue is when the plant may be in a condition where it's starting to steal a mobile nutrient from the old tissue, because it's going to support the new first. Now, it can be because of how things are flowing around in the plant, and there's nutrient sinks and things that happen with different nutrients. But in general, yeah, if I'm looking at a mobile nutrient and it's higher in the new tissue than the old tissue, that right away gives me the idea that I need to take a closer look.
And you're just looking for signs at that point of deficiencies.
Yeah, I'd start, comparing it to my benchmarks with other fields. I might compare it to last year's results. I like to do a lot of benchmarking with these tools because, just because it's last year's data doesn't mean it doesn't have useful information for this year.
Yeah.
And taking this to the biological aspect of this. So your fungal properties are what are responsible for going out and making your phosphorus available to your plant.
Yeah, actually the fungi are the ones that do the heavy lifting in terms of the solubilizing of changing the soil nutrient potential into actual plant nutrient status. So if you've got all this phosphorus that's locked up in the soil, the fungi are putting out phosphatase enzyme and then making that available. In the case of the endophytic fungi, the ones that have colonized partially inside that root and put a hyphae out there that acts like a tiny little root hair, they're actively mining and translocating those nutrients into the plant. So bacteria will do some of that, but the fungi do it.
The infrastructure
much
of
better,
it, yeah.
And so, if I have phosphorus in the soil but not in the plant, that's a deficiency of the performance of the biology. And if we get that biology in there and functioning correctly, we'll fix that problem without putting on any phosphorus.
And if you did need to make an application of phosphorus, would the efficiency of a foliar applied phos, or even a fish or a squid or something like that in that form, is going to be so much more efficient than a dry applied early in the season?
Yeah, if the phosphorus is delivered in a
amino acid form,
or if it's in a complex form with a molecule with other things, so sulfates or other materials, it's the biology that breaks that bond and makes those available. So you can increase the efficiency of most fertilizers by just having biology there to process it and deliver it to the plant. Because otherwise, you're kind of treating that plant like a sponge. It's like you can only put on things in an ionic form that, kind of coincidentally run into a root, or mobilized by flowing with water. In the case of the biology, we can turn that into an active mechanism where they're actively collecting and delivering these materials to the plant.
It's amazing. I don't know. I've wasted a lot of time and money. I know that. And then the one that we always show deficiency here on our farm is potassium. But boy, we did a bang up job this year.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's a Mother Nature helping hand as much as anything we've done.
Well, it looks like you just towed the line perfectly with that. It looks like your efficiency with the material you applied met the needs of the plant, and I would call that a success. I look at this as like I would use what I did on this field as a benchmark for other fields.
Okay.
There you go.
Yep. And the phosphorus, we need to tweak that maybe a little.
Yeah,
fungal
that one needs a
population.
little help. Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, and that's what we find in a lot of fields is especially with our regenerative growers, that they've done a good job of lower no-till and cover crops and for 20 years. And we look at their soils, and they'll have a pretty good bacterial population, and so that at least that part of the community is functioning for them. But they'll have no fungal population whatsoever. So all of the things that the fungi are supposed to be doing for you are just missing.
Yeah, well, I mean, most of the tests we've done here in years past is 99% bacteria,
which is common.
Yeah,
very common.
Yeah, the fungi are the most fragile part of the community. They don't like the physical disturbance, and then systemic chemicals really throw them for a loop. So there's a lot of the things that we apply that are really adversely detrimental to the fungal population, much more than the rest of the population.
So, Austin, the thing that really makes me upset with myself is, we've been working on this a long time, and if you're out here and you are at 99-1, it's not a 5-6 year journey to get that corrected. It starts after harvest.
Yes,
and because that's when the fungal communities can live. I learned today because it's the only time, Mr. Dave, we're in the right carbon to nitrogen ratio in the cycle. Is that correct?
Yeah, the crop residue creates a wonderful habitat for propagating the fungi because they can go into a metabolism where it's saprophytic, and they're breaking down that necrotic dead plant tissue. And it's a good moisture condition and habitat availability for us to propagate the fungi. And then what you're talking about in terms of the carbon to nitrogen ratio, that really creates the best opportunity for us to fix nitrogen for all year, because most of the time in our production season, we'll have plenty of available nitrogen. And in most soils, carbon is actually a limiting factor. So even though we have microbes in the field that are capable of fixing nitrogen, they don't really have any motivation to, because nitrogen's not a limiting factor. That's true all production season except for that crop residue breakdown, because most of our crop residues are much higher carbon and much lower nitrogen. So if we've got like a wheat straw or any kind of straw, tends to be like more like 50 carbon to a nitrogen, or corn 35 to 1. And what life likes is about 15 to 1, 15 carbon to every nitrogen. So if you have a lot more carbon than you do nitrogen, then nitrogen's the limiting factor. So that means that all of the microbes that are capable of fixing nitrogen will do it
on in high gear.
Yeah, and we get the benefit of that when we look at the soil analysis in the spring. We go, wow, not only did we capture all the nutrient potential of what was in the residue, but we also fixed a whole bunch of free nitrogen, and it's going to definitely affect how we look at our beginning fertility program for that next crop.
Yeah, that's something. Well, Austin, I think I've had all the schooling I want from Mr. Dave over here. I feel like the guy that Michael Jordan just went over and stuck his tongue out and just dunked it over my head. So it's a lot to
digest,
a lot in it. So anything, Austin, you want to add or get Mr. Dave to put in his any further thoughts?
No, I mean, just, Dave, I appreciate you breaking this down for us and, kind of putting this in a different term, and showing kind of how to interpret this and just how those management decisions are so impactful, and how you can take this information and use it to make good management decisions, and, understanding that that biology is the key to this. At the end of the day, is you can, put as many, as much fertility out there as you want to, but at the end of the day, if you're lacking that relationship with your biology, you're kind of walking backwards faster than you are forward. And so I think that it's good to see that and to put that into perspective, and seeing, kind of some of these problems, these pain points that producers have, and being able to look at this and say, okay, how do I lean heavier on this biology? So.
Yep. So, Mr. Dave, anything you have left, or
no? We enjoy working in so many different crops in different parts of the country, and as we start, really integrating with growers and their production practices, good things start to happen, and things get easier, and farming gets fun again.
Farming fun again. Yeah. So that's good. So reach out to Dave at Sustainable Growing Solutions, Austin at Elevate Ag, and me here at Root Cause and Rooted Ag Systems. And we don't know what we are, Endurance Ag. So it's just a fun thing here. But man, I tell you, I appreciate the education. This would have cost quite a few dollars at some PhDs lounge. So I really appreciate the education, and I can tell it's one that you've had some failures and you've learned and you've built on it, and that's what I respect about it. So
absolutely,
yep. All right, well, thank you guys, and check us out here and like and share. So thanks,
Caleb.